Good morning, Year 4, and welcome to your English lesson today. Today we're going to carry on with our planning. This is our second lesson on our plan ready for writing this week. So in yesterday's lesson, we started doing our basic plan and we created our story map and our 8 main ideas that are happening in our myth based on the original one, the man who cut down trees. Today we're going to flesh out that plan a bit more so we're ready to start our writing. So today what you're going to have is I have created a planning format for you. You'll see that it's broken down into different sections. On one side, you've got my plan as a hint. That's what we're going to go through today. And the other side is your plan, where you're going to write your notes down. Remember, this is still only planning. So you're only writing down bullet points, what happened. You're not actually writing full sentences yet. I want you to pause after each section so you can fill in your bit of the plan. I've also reattached the model text, the man who cut down trees, but I have illustrated it this time so that it tells you which section is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. to really help you. So I suggest you read that first so you get a really good understanding about what's going to go into each section. So the very first thing we need to think about is the protagonist, and that means the main character in the story. We can't just have it as a person, we need to have an actual name. So I'm going for Tiberius. And what I've done in the assignment is I've attached a link to a website that gives you loads of good Roman names so that we're using words like Tiberius, Octavius. We're not using names like Dave or Boris. Of course, I'm more than happy to see some female protagonists in there as well. It doesn't have to be a male protagonist. Now, because I've got my main character now, my protagonist Tiberius, I need to know what his characteristics are, because obviously with loads of work on that, we need to know how to describe them and his actions throughout the story. So I'm going for 2. You don't have to go for 2. You need at least 1, but I'm going for 2. And I'm going to make Tiberius dishonest and vicious. So he lies and he cheats and he's not very nice and he kills things. So dishonest and vicious. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to complete this bit of the plan. So next where it says character, I'm going to write his name or her name. And next to the characteristic, I'm going to write the 1 or the 2 characteristics. So we need to pause the video now, find a name for your character, and think about some characteristics for your character. Okay, so let's look at section 1. Section 1 of my initial plan says he kills all the animals in the forest. And if you remember from the man who cut down trees, he is cutting down all of the trees. People are telling him, please don't cut down the trees, but he ignores them and doesn't care. So for my section, I'm going to go with Tiberius didn't like the animals eating the forest flowers. He hunted them day and night. People told him to stop as the animals were a gift from the gods. Tiberius ignored them. So you see how I fleshed out the ideas there? So I said the initial one, he kills the animals, but I fleshed it out a bit more to he didn't like them because they eat the flowers. He then hunted them. People told him to stop, but Tiberius ignored them. And now obviously they're not sentences that can go straight into our writing. If I was to write those as my actual myth, it'd be really boring. But I've got a good plan there for the first 4 sentences or the first couple of paragraphs of my writing. So what I'd like you to do, like I've done here, go through your first section, flesh just out that little bit. Now you could use my ideas and stick very closely to them. So if you've got, for example, that he kills all the enemies, you could very simply move, Tiberius didn't like the enemies taking over his land. He slaughtered them day or night. So you just take what I've done and you change it a little bit. Don't go too far from the story. Think about what's in the model text and what's in my plan, and have a go at your section 1. So pause the video, have a go at section 1 now. Okay, so let's look at section 2. In section 2 of my plan, I said Diana finds all the animals dead. So if you remember in the original one, that's when Ceres comes along and finds all of the trees have been chopped down. So to flesh it out a bit in my plan, I've got Diana is strolling through the forest. She finds all the bodies piled up under a tree. A deer tells her it's Tiberius killed them all. I stuck the deer in the end there because I thought, it's a myth. I can have a talking deer if I want to. He's not going to be the main character. The deer's not going to go and avenge all its fallen friends, with a sword in its hand and a big cap on its head. It's just there to tell Diana what's happening. She's the god of wild animals. I'm pretty sure she can talk to them. So you can see that I've just fleshed out a little bit. Again, not proper sentences, just a few ideas about what's going to happen in your section where your god finds out about who has killed all the animals or what someone has done to cause the problem. Okay, so pause the video now and have a look at section 2. Okay, so let's look at section 3. In my one, that's where my main character starts to feel dirty and he keeps washing his hands constantly. So to flesh it out, I've got Tiberius returns home and tries to wash the blood off his hands and clothes. The blood will not come off. He uses all the oil trying to clean himself. He bloodies all his clothes trying to clean himself. He starts to panic. Okay, I've linked this originally to the original text where he goes home and he eats absolutely everything he can find in the house. So here he's trying desperately to clean himself off. Okay, so I've used oil here rather than soap because obviously soap in Roman times, it was oil. Think about what we did in the Roman bathhouse work the other day. But what's going to happen? Your character's going to go home and something's going to happen to them here. So they might be washing constantly, or he says they play all the games, or they eat all the food. What is that happens? Flesh this bit out now. Have a look at the model text to help you and use my ideas to help you as well. So pause the video and complete section 3. Okay, so let's look at section 4. So in my one, he steals money for soap. And I remember again, there's no soap, so we're going to go with oil instead. But this is where he goes off and he's completely run out of oil in the house, so he's off now stealing money. And the original one, this is where he went off borrowing money instead. So he creeps into people's houses at night to steal money. That should say at night, not that night. The next day, he buys all the oil he can afford. He's still kind of got rid of the blood, and he is furious at the gods. Okay, so as I said in the original one, is where he goes borrowing money. This time I've got him creeping into people's houses. He steals all their money. He goes off and buys as much oil as he can, but he still cannot get rid of that blood. It is still stuck to him and his clothes, and he's starting to get really angry at the gods. So again, have a look at the model text, have a look at my plan, have a look at your plan. And I want you to fill in section 4 of your plan now. Okay, so let's look at section 5. So in section 5, that's where he tries to sell the son. Now, if you remember in the original one, that's where he tries to sell his daughter. And after a couple of days of homeschooling, I can completely understand why he wants to sell his daughter. But he's going to try and sell his daughter. In mind, he's going to try and sell the son. So Tiberius decides to try and sell the son to the priest in Diana's temple. He walks off to go and find them, but he's still covered in blood. The son is worried and he begins to cry. Okay, so we've got him here, same thing. He's trying to sell the son. He can't say it to anyone. He goes off to find some priests in Diana's temple. He's going off covered in blood, and the son begins to cry. So have a look at your plan that you did yesterday. Have a look at the model text. Have a look at mine and fill in section 5 now. So pause the video and fill in section 5. Okay, so let's move on to section 6. In this one, Apollo disguises the sun as the moon. So Apollo sees the sun crying. Apollo disguises the sun as the moon, and the land is plunged into darkness. Tiberius wails in dismay as he needs more oil. Now, if you remember from the original one, this is where the character goes off to find a slave trader to sell his daughter. Neptune comes along and helps out his daughter by turning her into a fisherman. And he comes along and he's absolutely wailing in dismay because he's so hungry. So I've taken the model text, I've added it and changed it a little bit here. So like I've done, can you pause the video now, fill in section 6, looking at what I've done, looking at what was on your plan from yesterday, and look what is in the model text. Okay, so let's move on to section 7. In section 7, this is where he tries to sell his own flesh. Now, if you think about the original one, this is where he starts eating himself. He goes down to the beach and he starts chomping down on his arm, gets tastier and tastier and tastier. So in mine, Tiberius decides to sell his flesh to the butcher. He cuts off his flesh and muscles to sell. He keeps cutting and cutting until nothing is left. So rather than eating himself, he's got himself a nice knife and he's slicing bits of him off there to sell to the butcher, to get the money to clean the blood off his skin and off his clothes. And he keeps cutting and cutting and cutting until there is nothing left of him. Now, obviously, this is not very realistic, but it's a myth telling a moral, so we're allowed to be a bit fanciful in it. So, again, have a look at your bits for section 7 and pause the video now to complete your section 7. Okay, let's look at the last section, section 8. This is where he is a skeleton. So in the original one, the daughter gets everyone to rush down to the beach and they find that he has completely disappeared because he has scoffed himself down. Well, in mine, everyone follows the screams into the forest. Of course, he's screaming. He's cutting himself up. It's going to be pretty painful, I would have thought. And all they find is a skeleton with piles of flesh next to it. So there is the ending, linked to my beginning where he's killing all the animals. Now he's dead at the end in the forest where he killed the animals. I've got that link between the beginning in the end, and it's a very quick kind of one. Everyone turns up and there he is, a skeleton and piles of flesh. So look at your plan, look at my plan, look at the model text, pause the video now and complete your section 8. Okay, so now you should have a complete plan, sections 1 to 8, with lots more fleshed out details. So you've got lots of bullet points in each one, ready to start our writing. You should now essentially have the story pretty much planned out, ready to start talking through and ready to start writing. Now, we're going to do some shared writing before you get onto your writing over the next couple of days, but you need to have this plan in place so you know what your story is going to be. If you're finished and you're looking for more to do, maybe get another pen out and add some more detail to some of the adjectives you're going to use, maybe change some of the bits and pieces if you're not happy with your myth. So, looking forward to see what you've got on your plan, ready for our writing.